good afternoon. It's nice to see many of you. My name is Tsiring. I am one of the associate director here at the FCJ Refugee Center, and I oversee the settlement area. So today webinar will be about the housing benefits and the housing search. So we put part one because when I was putting the slides together, it was a bit of too much information if I put both together. So we decided at the very last minute, sorry about that, to split in half. So today we will just talk only about the housing search. And next week, March 9th, we will do the second part of the webinar, which is we will talk about what are the housing benefits available, not just the COP, which most of you are familiar with, but other types of housing benefits through the province. And we will talk mostly about that, and we will have a discussion. So FCG Refugee Center, these are some of the services programs that we have. Settlement and integration, we have a transitional housing for women, for single moms, single women, refugee claimants. With the immigration support, we support with everything you needed with the refugee process, not only the refugee process, but we also support with the PRA, which is the pre-risk removal assessment, the refugee appeal, if you have received a negative decision the first time, and humanitarian and compassionate ground application, sponsorships, and work permit, and so on. Then we also have anti-human trafficking, which we are part of the Migrant Workers Mobile Clinic. We provide direct services to the trafficked persons or any victims of human trafficking, labor trafficking, Migrant Women's Counter Trafficking Alliance, as well as Youth Alliance Against Human Trafficking also, where we do a lot of prevention work. And we also have, like, as you see, this webinar is part of public education and networking, which includes webinars, training sessions, Borderless Voices podcasts. You can listen to, you can go on our websites. We have all our social media link there. So these are pretty much the services who we are at FCJ Refugee Center. And basically, I want to clarify one thing also before I move on, is that this webinar is put together mostly for newcomers, for refugee claimants who just arrived to Canada and doesn't have much knowledge or information surrounding the housing search and how the housing system works here. So when to start housing search? As a refugee claimant in Toronto, when you first arrive in Canada, the first two priorities that you and your family have is to deal with the immigration matter, because there's a deadline. You have a limited time of 30 to 45 days. And at the same time is to find that permanent housing. Let's put it permanent housing because it's outside the shelter, right? So Housing searches, it's very challenging, especially here we are dealing with the housing crisis at the same time, and it does take a lot of time for the housing search. So it's very important that you start as soon as you're able to. When you're ready to start looking for apartment, you should, if you are connected to any organization or you are connected to any shelter, you must connect with your housing worker to receive more information and to receive more support. Excuse me. So, what are the housing options for refugees? Um, these are primarily three main things that we often look at. The first thing is a shelter for a newly arrived refugee claimants that can be obtained through central intake or a drop-in center at 129 Peter Street. Now, the 129 Peter Street is a drop-in center. What happens when you call central intake? You have a house for 2 3 days. You have a place to stay for 2 3 days, but after 2 3 days, you do not know where you will end up, right? So sometimes calling central intake may take long and you will be put on the waiting list. So what happens after 2 3 days? You don't have anywhere to go, and central intake still keeps telling you that you should call every 2 hours, or you should call tomorrow or after 2 days. So what happens in those cases? If you don't have a place to stay, you can go at 129 Peter Street, which is a drop-in center. You will have a roof, they provide food, and they have a phone also where you can use so that you can keep continuing to call central intake while waiting on a wait list. And then the second thing is a refugee house, which is ours, FCJ Refugee Center. We are one of the refugee house. We have three transitional housing, as I said earlier, and there are many other. There are around 31 other refugee houses in Ontario. Not all of the refugee houses can provide a shelter. However, many can. And then the third options is you either stay at your friend or family house for a day or two until you move to the first option. So this is types of housing in Canada. So there are different types of housing. First is houses such as detached houses, with you have a property around you or your neighbors. And then the semi-detached or townhouses, where each house shares a wall with another. Those are called semi-detached. And then condominiums, which in short also we call condo. And then the apartments, the rental apartments, which includes apartments with 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms, or even a bachelor. Bachelor units, it's made of a single room as a living area and a bedroom together, and then you have a kitchen as well, and the washrooms. And then the last but not least is the rental room, which are usually large rooms. They're divided into small private rooms, which can also be called a rooming house, where you share the accommodation, where you share the washrooms, where you share the kitchen, other, so sorry. Joey, sit. So that's a rooming house. So following are some of the factors for housing search. Um, so depend what you are looking for. It depends. It depends on the price, which the things affecting the prices can be the size of the size of the house, location where the house or where the apartment is located. It also will depend, the price will depend the distance to the public transit. So it is important that you set a budget before you start looking. For example, if you look at location, it's important to think about the cost, what you can afford, because for example, if we look at city of Toronto, some areas in Toronto are more expensive than others. So you need to do a little bit of research on the locality also. Regardless, wherever you move or wherever you live, school and services are available in every areas. And for example, if your child or they're already in the school, it can be transferred to the another school wherever you're going to move. So it can be transferred. Um, One of the factor for the housing search that we always ask, and we also encourage to newcomers and refugee claimants coming in, is like if you are open to moving out of Toronto, because sometimes housing outside Toronto are more affordable. And also the sizes of houses are also different, a little bit more spacious, because now if you look here at Toronto, the new buildings, the affordable buildings, they are a little bit, it's smaller in size, unlike many years ago. So these are some of the factors that you need to think about before you do the housing search as well. So setting a budget, always, most of the time when you initially come as a refugee claimant, your only source of income will be social assistance. So you need to know how much money you will be receiving each month, and how much do you need for example, how much you need to set aside for food, how much do you need for transportation, and how much you are going to spend for phone, and then other expenses. So we put phone in there also because that's one of the basic necessity also. So you need to know how much you want to spend on each of that, and then how much will you be left for a rent. So when you do the housing search, always check the rent amount listed on the advertisement, because sometimes what they have listed on the website or on the Kijiji or marketplace, wherever it is, sometimes when you give them a call, it's the amount is a little bit different. So make sure you confirm that. So we break down the Ontario Works allowance. So I'm assuming that all the participants know what Ontario Works is. Ontario Works is a social assistance that you receive if you are in Ontario, and it's this allowance is available in every province, or in wherever you live in Canada. So basically, this is the rate as of now. If you're single, in total, you will receive 733. I believe that is 743. 33, yes, sorry. You will receive 733, and from that 733, 390 is what you will receive for shelter. What that means is that if so, when you look for a place to rent, that's the amount you will receive, and that's the maximum amount you will receive. It won't go above that. If you find a place for 600 per for a room per month, you will still receive 390, and then there's an adjustment needed from the basic needs, which is 343, so on and so forth. So for example, if you look at the single parent plus a child, you will receive shelter allowance of 642, and the basic needs is 360. However, you will receive 230 as a transitional child benefit, because until you become a convention refugee or protected person, you won't be eligible to receive Canada Child Benefit. But when you are on Ontario Works, that's what you will receive, which is the transitional child benefit. And then in total, you have around 1232. So those are the amount as of today, what someone, a family, single, when you come to Canada as a refugee claimant, this is what you will receive, maximum a month. So now this slide is about how much can you spend on rent. So like I said in the previous slide, as per a single person, so your maximum shelter allowance or a housing allowance is 390, which comes to a total of 733. And with the Ontario Works, what happens is if you find something, if you find, let's say you found a room which is 700 a month, and then you let your worker, case worker, knows that it's 700. So what happens is that goes beyond 85% of your total income. So you won't be eligible to rent that. You cannot, because you won't get the shelter allowance. So that's how we put it out there. If you look at, for example, if you look at the single, if you look at the single person allowance per month, so from the Ontario Works, you are allowed to look for, you are allowed to spend on the rent 85% of what you receive, which is you can go up to 623 per month for a rental room. If you can find, and as you look, so 80% is this, 75% is that, right? So like I said, you won't receive 390. You will receive whatever you receive. This has to be deducted from here, and then we will figure out what other expense, how you will meet them. So that is basically the 85%. We put 85%, that's the maximum you're allowed to spend if you're on Ontario Works on rent. So now where and how you are going to search housing. That's one of the most common and one of the most questions that we receive from every newcomers and from every refugee claimants who just arrived, right? So we always ask them, like, do you have any friends and relatives here who lives in the same apartment, right? So if you have someone living in the apartment, you can ask your friends and relatives if they can ask the property manager at the apartment to check for any availability. So that's the first go-to thing, how you can look for a place. Secondly is the classified section of newspaper, online listings, such as when you go to those the stores, your community stores. I have seen many newspapers in your own native language. So there are section in the back of the newspaper where they will advertise for a room for rent or apartment, bachelor for rent. Those are that's one of the avenue that you can go look for housing search. And then, of course, other thing on online listing, there are various websites where you can look for a housing for apartments. And the third is the Facebook Marketplace, which I have seen. There are quite many advertisement on the Facebook Marketplace regarding the a room, especially like I saw mostly a room for rent, or more on a temporary short-term lease. So you can, if you have a Facebook account, that's maybe one thing you might want to go check and make sure it's legit. Mm, because there are many scammers out there in the Facebook. And then the last thing is, if you are interested, you can, if you like certain location, maybe you might want to go to those areas you're interested in living, and then look for a rental posted sign. Sometimes what happens is there are many landlords who don't post their house for rental on online or on a website, or they simply post those rental posted sign outside their house. In that way, how, if that house, if they are giving a room for rent or basement for rent, that's how you will know. And that's one good option, I believe, is especially if you have a children. uh, you might sometimes you have a certain schools that your preference, and to go to that homeschool you need to live in that catchment area, right? So it's better you go around and check for any rental posted sign and take the number, and that's how you can contact. um, be very careful and cautious of the scams, because we have seen many happening, especially with the newcomers. So you must be aware of the false advertisement of these apartments. Some listings online, even though they are online, but they are not really available for rent. So you must clarify, and you must have to have a contact with them, right? And then the second thing, which this is one of the most common scams that we have noticed with the newcomers, is that if someone is asking you for a deposit, right? You saw something, you were just browsing through websites or through a Facebook Marketplace, and you found a place that you like and find a decent price, affordable. And sometimes the person will say, "Oh, thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, I'm not in the country. I'm out of country, away on a vacation. Won't be back for 6 months. But I have my house basement for a rent." Or a room for rent. That's the very common line that they use in terms of the scam. And then they will send you a picture, a few pictures of the house, and it will look too good. When you see something too good to believe, then that's one red flag that you need to be cautious of. So they will ask, okay, you can deposit money, and then you can go and you will have the place. So this is a big no-no, and please be very careful before you deposit any money, unless you don't have the in-person contact with the landlord or with the property manager. You're not supposed to deposit any money. Remember, most of the apartment buildings in Toronto are managed by companies. They're managed by companies. So what that means is that usually in every apartment that you go, as you enter, there will always be an office there for a property manager, or sometimes can be called super. So that's the person you need to contact regarding any availability in the building. If you can ask the person, is there any available units in your apartment? So that's the person you have to go to. Or sometimes the same, the same company has 2-3 different apartments or in a different location. So you can also ask, okay, if it's not available, if you don't have any availability in this apartment, do you have any other building that you have available? So those are the questions that you can make. So after search, let's say, so you found a place that you are interested in. What's next? So what you will do, you call the number listed on the rental posted or on the website or wherever you get. And then you email the person and ask for an appointment to see the apartment or see the unit or see the room. That's the first thing you have to do after you found a place that you are interested in. Once you receive your appointment, this is the next step that you are looking to do for. You have to please make sure that you are on time and make sure you look for directions ahead of time because in most cases, probably there are a lot of people looking at the same apartment. So be polite and respectful because it helps to maintain a good impression. Also, to be on the time is good because you never know if there is anyone before you coming to look for a place, This is, we recommend always bring someone with you when you go for viewing the unit. Ask if you can take pictures after you look at the unit. You can take pictures. Don't forget to test doors if they are closing properly, if the latch are working properly, the light switches, the toilet flush, all the outlet, the electrical outlet. Make sure to test those and check if they are working. Also, you can also ask what is included in the rent and what are the other extra costs, if there are any, aside from the rent that was posted or that was whatever the rent has been advertised. This is just a gentle reminder because sometimes what happens here in Canada, when you have that, when someone posts a rent amount, remember that sometimes the rent includes utilities such as water, electricity, internet in some cases, but sometimes it is not included in the rent. So you have to always ask for clarification about this before you apply for rental. And after viewing the unit, you must ask for this clarification if the utilities are included or they are not. If they are not, then that will be an extra cost on besides the rent. So what happens after applying for the rental unit, right? If you find a place where you want to live and first thing is you need to fill out an application to show your interest. Every application is slightly different, but they often ask the same questions, more or less. Your personal information like your name, family members, who will be the occupant and who will be the leaseholder. Those are the things they will ask. Secondly is the finances, which is um, the source of income. It doesn't matter if you are on Ontario Works. It doesn't matter if you're receiving social assistance or ODSP. When someone asks, what is your source of income? What do you do finance? You can tell that I'm receiving social assist Ontario Works, which is a source of income. And some of them might ask like a work history in Canada, if any, if it's applicable to you. The work history in Canada, what they're looking for mainly is sometimes it's a reference letter from your employer that you're working there. And that the fourth point depends, because it depends on, it doesn't happen mostly in the property managed by, like the companies. This deposit happens in a smaller, for example, if someone in a rooming house, if someone is renting out the room, and then if there are too many interests in the same, but make sure before you do the deposit that if not something doesn't go through that you're receiving a refund, right? Don't just give it like that. Make sure it's the person that you are is a trustworthy. And I think that's the judgment you have to make, because sometimes what happens is that you might come across a complete stranger who's renting out a room, or sometimes it's through your acquaintance that, okay, there is a room there but you may need a deposit. So those are the judgment things that you need to make, your own judgment. But this requirement of deposit is it's not in every case. So these are some of the required documents that when you found a place that you are interested in, these are some of the documents that you will require to present. So the first thing is your ID. This may be just a requirement, but they are not allowed to ask about your immigration status. Again, like I said in the previous slide, proof of income. What is proof of income? Most of the time, I have come across many newcomers or many refugee claimants who are new to country, right? Oh, I went to look for this place, and the landlord is asking my proof of income, all this, right? And most of the time, we kind of assume also that the proof of income means like like a work employment. Not necessarily. When someone asks for proof of income, what you can give is the Ontario Work Statement. What is Ontario Work Statement? Is a letter that you receive every month from the Ontario Works about how much you're receiving for basic needs, how much you receive for shelter. Also, now you can get the Ontario Work Statement through My Benefit also. So you can simply submit the Ontario Work Statement. If you're looking to if you're looking to rent an apartment, which requires a guarantor, the landlord, the property manager wants to give it to you. However, since you are new to country and you don't have all the required documents they were asking, for example, in many cases, they ask for credit check, and employment letter. So those cases for newcomers, for refugee claimants, these are a little bit outside the scope. And in those cases, they might ask you to provide a guarantor. So the guarantor can be anyone. However, if someone decided to be your guarantor, then the landlord or the property manager will be asking the guarantor about all these documents, and then the guarantor is supposed to present those to the property manager or for your rental application. Someone who signs the lease with you, in this case, a guarantor. If you have a guarantor who's signing the lease, the guarantor also is confirming that all the rent payments will be made and abide by all the rules that applies to the rental unit. So the guarantor will have the same responsibility. Landlord may ask you for other documents, such as your social insurance number, your bank statement, but you're not obligated to provide those. So these are some really important things that you should know when you go look for a rental unit. The information that a landlord can ask you about your income and if you're working. When you say income, like, they will ask you for income, but sometimes there are discrimination based on if someone is receiving a social assistance. There are some discrimination. So this is, they cannot do that. It's against the Ontario housing rights. Oh, no, sorry, my bad. Yes, your income. I'm mixing two things. My apologies. I want to clarify again. The landlord can ask you for your income and if you're working. So like I said, if you're receiving social assistance, that's your income. A landlord can also ask you how many people are living in the unit. For example, you can decide who you want to put as a leaseholder, and who you want to list as an occupant. Because depending on which category you put, has their own rights and responsibilities. So those things landlord can ask you. Landlord also can ask you if you smoke or have animals. What they cannot ask you is your age, your sexual orientation, your immigration status, your religion, your health status, including pregnancy. So these are major things that they cannot ask you. So now you found a place, you know how much you're going to pay, and you have decided to rent this, right? You know who you're going to put as a leaseholder and who will be the occupants. And then comes the rental contract, signing the lease or the rental contract or rental agreement. So once your application has been approved, you will need to sign. This is a lease is an agreement with the landlord that you will pay rent and utilities if applicable on time and in a full amount. It is very important that you must pay your rent first of every month. You go one day late, and if you have accumulation of a late rental payment, after certain numbers, you will be eligible. Landlord can evict you, and the landlord will have a base of eviction also. So make sure you pay first of every month. What is in the lease? What is included in the lease? In the lease, it's most lease or most rental agreements are a standard lease and should outline what is your monthly cost, what is the monthly rent, and also should specify if the utilities is included or not. And secondly, the lease should also outline what is the responsibility, rights and the responsibility of the tenant as well as landlords. For example, in winter, if you are living in the house, landlord have a responsibility for certain things as well as tenant in terms of clearing up, shoveling the snows. So those things you must read the lease very carefully. The lease should also outline the length of agreement. How long is the agreement? Normally, a lease runs for 1 year. However, there are many other contracts which are month-to-month basis. So that again, it depends on what you and your landlord has agreement on. If you are satisfied with the unit, you can, after a year, you can stay past 1 year. And after 1 year finish, you do not need to sign any other lease.
Can I add something there, if you don't mind? When it comes to Ontario Works, you know that people are eligible to get last month rent from OW. And just make sure that before you sign any contract, if you're agreeing or you like a place and the landlord is okay with you, before signing anything, you have to share that information with the worker to make sure that you get that.
Akida,
Yes.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, because that is something that I would worry, right?
Yes, yes. It is part of the slides. Don't worry. Thank you. I'm getting there one step at a time. So these are the things you need to sign the lease. After you found the rental place and you signed the lease, which is a rental agreement, the next step is to contact your worker, the Ontario Works worker, and you can explain about where you find the place, and then you have to send that agreement or the lease to your worker. What that happens. So these are the things that worker is looking for: the name of the owner, the landlord, the property where you are renting, and the name of the occupants, if it's you only or if it's the whole family, all that included, and what is the monthly rent. And if the landlord, well, in Ontario, in most case scenario, you will be asked for first and last month rent. If you were not asked, it's good. But if you were asked for the last month rent deposit, you need to apply for a housing, it's called a housing stabilization fund, which you can apply through your Ontario Works Worker. And this is dealt by a different office. Therefore, it does take a minimum like a week to 2 weeks. So make sure you have those time, right? Because sometimes you need the last month rent and the landlord cannot wait. So those things, make sure that you communicate very clearly with your Ontario Works Worker. And in that way, you will receive you can receive the last month rent deposit. And also, if you have a lease and if you have a rental agreement, you can upload all these documents to My Benefits as well. My Benefits is an online portal for the client, for the people receiving social assistance. So you can apply, you can upload all the necessary documents in My Benefits, as well as I would recommend that you call your worker, because sometimes what happens is that there's a deadline, there's a timeline, right? That your landlord wants that you get your last month deposit as soon as possible. And since the housing stabilization funds, it takes times to kick in. So that's why it's important that you communicate that with your worker, and sometimes the worker can speed up and send all the necessary documents to the other office as soon as possible. So rights and responsibilities. As a tenant, you have both rights and responsibilities. You are responsible for paying your rent on time every month, as I explained earlier. You also have responsibilities of keeping your unit clean and free of damage. Again, all these should be in the lease when you sign. So make sure you read every thing properly before you sign anything. Keeping noise levels low to respect the other tenants in the building. This could be applicable if you are in a rooming house. This is applicable if you are in an apartment building. This is applicable if you are in a condo where you are sharing, where you are sharing the rooms with other, shared accommodation. Because after certain, I'm not 100% sure if it's still 11 p.m. After 11 p.m. and before 7, it's a quiet time. So if there is too much of noise, there could be, you have a responsibility to keep those things in mind. Taking your garbage, compost, recycling outside or into a bin. This depends, again, if you're in an apartment building, this is not applicable because it's the property manager is the one doing it, right? But if you are renting on the whole house for your family, then you will have, you may have these responsibilities. Again, these are the things that you really need to clarify before you sign the lease, or to make sure that it is somewhere there. So because if you are not taking the responsibilities, it could be a reason for eviction also. So those are the things that you might want to avoid. Moving out. So in Toronto, you must give 60 days written notice if you're planning to move out. Your landlord must also give you 60 days written notice if they are asking you to move out. However, this is a very it's not very detailed, because if we go into this, then this will take another 20-30 slides. But there are exceptions to this also. So that is if a landlord is asking you to move out before 60 days, I suggest that you take, if you are aware of what your rights are, it's good. If you are not sure of your rights, then you may want to explore nearby legal clinic and check, get a legal support in terms of moving out. So with this is the last slides for today. And moving forward, next March 9th, we will have the second part of our housing webinar, where we will talk a little bit about what is Canada Ontario Housing Benefit. Who is eligible, what is it that you need. So we will talk about a few of the housing benefits, and I put some here. The first is COP. Second is what is subsidized housing? What are the wait lists? What are your chances? And thirdly, there is a priority housing if you're a survivor of domestic abuse, or if you're a survivor of human trafficking or labor trafficking. So because just the housing search alone is a very lengthy topic, so we decided we'll move. So these are some of the topics that we will explore in our next webinar. And with this, we finish with today's webinar. Thank you all very much. It's trying to not to take too long. It's a good 1 hour. Thank you all so much for your time and attending the webinar. And as much as I learned from you all, I hope you learned something from this webinar. And thank you for joining. And hopefully we'll see next week and have more discussion.